Welcome to Brokers of Secrets. My name is William Lamb, and I'm the host, and I'm also the creator of something called Upgrade, a methodology or even a technology that we have created to help humans upgrade their minds and therefore upgrade their lives. Now, in this very first episode, I want to give you an introduction to not only how Upgrade was created, the origin story, but also the importance of some of the secrets that we will be sharing with you in this and the following episodes. Now, just a disclaimer, these secrets are secrets of the mind. However, I'll be sharing them in a very educational type purpose. It very much about educating you what the mind can do, which is what we have poured our resources, our time and energy into the last decade. And exploring, I spent all this time and resources exploring what the human mind is really capable of. Now, I can't tell you that I know everything because nobody does. And the more I learn, the more I realize that I don't know. But the beauty is, there are some things that we have found, some patterns that we have found from the ancient time all the way to the modern time that gave me these insights and formulas, structures that I would love to share with you. And I think that as you receive it, you may practice, you may try it on, you may experience and experiment upon, and that you may find some massive benefits. You may find that it changes the way you perceive reality. You may find that your life improves in ways that you did not expect just by listening to this podcast. In fact, I may or may not even want to call this a podcast. This is a casual conversation, but the conversations within the conversations contain many of the extremely powerful principles that we have been able to aggregate and synthesize, that we've been able to collect and bring together in a structure that is easy to remember and easy to utilize. So let's jump in. I'm going to tell you a quick story of how it all began. So when I was about 17 years old, I remember moving to the US from Hong Kong. And I remember barely speaking English. And I thought to myself, I don't really know anyone. I don't have any social network really. And actually during that time, I met a friend who was very confident, very, very good socially. And he tended to attract many wonderful people into his life, quite naturally. And so one day as I was observing this, I asked him, I'm like, hey, what's your secret? What's your secret to your success, socially as well as otherwise? And he said, confidence. And I'm like, well, how do you learn confidence? Now, I know my friend was joking with me and he said, well, you're born with it or you don't have it, right? And that sparked a massive amount of curiosity. And I began to wonder, how do you become confident? How do you not only become confident, but are able to apply these whatever skills I didn't think I had to be able to interact with other people or interact with your own internal reality to create what you want externally? So as time passed, I thought, I got to take action. I got to take massive action to figure this out because I'm observing this massive gap. This friend of mine able to experience this incredible social life and also wonderful things in all areas of his life. And I am here struggling, seeing myself unable to, I spoke English some. At that point, I had learned a lot because I was going to college and I had to speak English and understand. That being said, I understood very, very minimally. And it's not just the words that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the things that are said or not said between the words. So long story short, I began to dive into, I found something that I felt like I needed to dive into, and it was something called NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming. Now, many of you have heard of NLP before, whether it was because you've been listening or you've been to seminars. Maybe you've studied with people like Tony Robbins or other legendary teachers of NLP. And I remember finding myself learning and listening and reading, and immediately it was like an obsession. Like you found something that was so uniquely dense with information and knowledge and wisdom that you just couldn't look away. So as I was doing that, I started studying, and immediately, and I'm not talking about like months, all right? I'm not talking about even weeks. Immediately, like days, as I was starting to study, I found myself changing how I feel, how I talk, how I interact with other people. And I knew it was working because I could see the responses. The outcome was just changing before my eyes. I needed more of it. And so at that time, I was actually looking at taking a training. And I was kind of scared because it was asking for thousands of dollars, and I was barely able to pay for my tuition in college. And I was like, oh man, I can't afford this. Now, fast forward. Fast forward. That was when I was 17. Fast forward to when I was about 25 years old. And this is where I'm going to tell you other parts of this story later, but I want to fast forward to this key point because when I was 25 years old, I had a startup. And this startup looked great on the outside. I don't know if you can relate to this. It's like a job or like you're sure I was an entrepreneur, but I felt like I was in a job that I couldn't get out of. It was miserable. I felt absolutely miserable. And nothing I do seemed to be able to fix what I observed as the problem. And the problem was we plateaued. We were growing. And then, as new entrepreneurs, we really didn't know super well all of the mechanics of business. Of course, no one does when they first start. We did the best we could, and yet we plateaued. At that point, my co-founder and I got together, great guy and, great friend. And I said to him, I'm like, I think that is my mind that's limiting us. Because I was this whole time as we were plateauing, I was reminded of what I experienced when I was 17, where it seems like I just didn't speak the language, or I didn't understand the culture, or I didn't know a lot of things and some of the social cues. I didn't grow up with it. So there was a lot of things I didn't understand. Yet, with all of those things that I considered, just as soon as I opened my mind and opened the books and opened the learnings and studied and began to train, even though I only had books back then, didn't even take a training, I noticed the change quite immediately. And I knew the only difference was what's going on in my mind. And so when I was 25 building this startup, and practically it was not only plateaued, it felt like it was failing, I told my co-founder, I said, you know what? I think it's time. It's time to fix the mind. And I'm not going to say it's his responsibility. I feel like if I am creating my own reality, I am responsible for my mind and what's going on. So I said, I need to do something about my mind. I need to do whatever it takes. And shockingly, he told me, you just need to work more. Now, I don't know if you've ever felt that way. Like you're stuck, you don't know where to go, you've done everything you could, at least you feel like you have, and then you're told to work more, right? And look, our parents have given us that very same advice. When we were younger, we didn't love school at certain parts, or maybe you never loved school, whatever. Like there were points that you're like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do the job or whatever. And then all you're told, and even the modern day entrepreneurial advice that you get is, if you are stuck, keep working, work harder, grind harder, hustle more, put in more nights, sacrifice more. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong, because some people simply don't know how to work, and they do need to learn how to work harder. Yeah. At that point, I was working 16-hour days. Sure, like I can argue that I wasn't being very effective, but why was I not effective, right? I was working so much. I was not having weekends. I didn't have any social life. I didn't do anything other than work. And yet my co-founder said, you need to work more. Now, it's not his fault. That's how we were taught, growing up. And I sensed that he was genuinely wanting to obviously work it out. And so that was the best he was doing, right? He was working more and he was living by example. I made a decision at that point. I said to myself, you know what? I am going to go to that training that I said no to before. I'm going to say yes this time. And I thought I was broke at 17. I was more broke when I was 25. I was way more broke. And frankly, I didn't have a lot of resources. And I felt like after all these years of hard work, I had not much to show for. So I actually called up one of my employees, a good friend of mine, actually. I said, hey, can I borrow some money? And I actually put the training on my credit card. Now, this is not financial advice of any sort. That's just what I did. I put the training, thousands of dollars on my credit card, which I had the room for. And then I couldn't pay rent because, paying rent, it's ACH payment. I call my employee, great friend, great guy. I'm still grateful for him for what he did. I was like, hey, man, like I know you don't know why I'm doing this. I know that you don't know too much. I just need some help paying rent. And he knew very well I put my credit card, I put the training on my credit card. And I have heartfelt gratitude for my friend there, right? He trusted that whatever I was going to do was going to be for my good. In this training, now this is where things get wild. I went to this training. Inside of this training, I was asked this one question that changed my life. And this is perhaps one of the greatest secrets that most people don't recognize. It's right before their eyes. I was asked this question in the training. They said, what do you want? And I'm like, oh, I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want this. No. They said, what do you want? Not what you don't want. What do you want? And I was like, whoa. I have been so accustomed my whole life in thinking about what I don't want. I hadn't actually stopped long enough. Sure, I knew some of what I wanted, but I hadn't stopped long enough to really ponder, to really allow myself to consider what I wanted. And then they knew I was struggling for a moment, and they said, what's the one thing when you got it will make this the greatest investment you've ever made in your entire life up to this point? I'm like, wow, that just took the question to a whole new level. What do I want? And if I got it, would make this the greatest transitional point of my entire life. And at first I was tempted to say money, like just make more money. But look, money flows, right? Money comes regardless. It's just who I am that really matters. But besides that, I was having all this thought, and they asked me again, what is the one thing? The one thing. And I want to invite you, as you're listening or watching, to consider what is your one thing that if you and as you and when you can continue to listen to and also to watch this podcast, what is the one thing for you when you got it will make this podcast and the investment of your time and energy and attention be the greatest investment you've ever made in your entire life? I want you to seriously consider that. Now, as I was thinking and contemplating and considering, a very clear but quiet answer came to mind. To find the one romantically. And I was like, don't be ridiculous. Really? I mean, that's really important to me at that time. Yet, that's the one thing? But as soon as I let that that voice inside of me speak to me more and really listen to it. And I thought, well, you know what? That is the one thing that I've been not letting myself have. And I've been suppressing myself of that desire to find the one person. And so without hesitation, I said, the one, I want to find the one. And then without hesitation in response, they said to me, when? And I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm ready for that. They're like, yeah, you are. I said, okay, how about 5 months? Because if this works, I'm coming back. I'm giving everything. I'm putting in everything. I'm selling anything I can. I'm coming back for more training. Unbeknownst to me, when I set 5 months, that I would be engaged in 4 months and 3 weeks. So literally 4 months and 3 weeks later, I was engaged. But what the wow part of the story is, and I haven't even told you that, was that when I set the goal, I went back and I designed what I wanted. And you'll hear more in the future episodes about how you can design what you want as if it's a coordinate, as if it's a very clear channel that you can tune into, and that you can measure the outcome. It's not wishful thinking anymore. It's not just dreaming. This is a structured method that allows you to tune yourself to the very, very channel or frequency that allows you to get what you want. Now, I'm also not talking about just manifestation, because I know that's a buzzword out there, right? People say, oh, manifest what you want. Well, can you repeatedly do that? What I'm interested in is an engineer methodology that allows you to repeatedly and scalably, well, create what you want by design, right? And that was my very first experience. I went home, I designed the one on a spreadsheet. Now, coming from an engineering background, I was naturally doing this. I even had rows and columns, prioritized, had a scoring system. I had everything. It may sound ridiculous, and perhaps it is, yet that day was the same day that she, which we didn't know each other, she broke up with her fiance. That same day. Now, think about what the odds are. Now, you may say, let's write it off as a coincidence. And too many of us do that too often in our lives when a really magical, magnificent event happens. And we're like, oh, that's a coincidence. That won't happen again. No, I was on a quest. When I experienced that, and I found the one, we got engaged, and I found out she broke up with her fiance after having booked the honeymoon, after having gotten the wedding dress and prepared the plan to be married, she broke up with him. She felt an incredibly strong feeling that she needed to do that and that someone around the corner would be the right person for her. Now, I didn't want to see that as a coincidence. Yet, trust me, I had many doubts at that time. I felt an extreme level of uncertainty. Like, could I really repeat this? So I thought, you know what? Coming again from an engineering background, could I repeat this? And I said, if I could, I have found a gold mine, the opening of many secrets. Because if you can design what you want and it shows up as you have designed it, literally, and I'm not talking about 1, 2, 5 attributes. I'm not talking about 10 attributes. I'm talking about, I wrote 83 attributes, rows and columns prioritized, categorized, and they were like an engineering spec sheet. That's how precise I went, right? Well, I decided, what if I could design my ideal clients? Why not? Why not, right? Now, we're just stepping into the origin of Upgrade. And what inspired this podcast, this series of conversations we're going to have together, right? And you'll see how this all transpires, how this all happens. So at that time, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to design what I want, who I want to work with. And I was in a room. I went back for more training. I was in a room with a lot of mental health doctors, therapists, psychologists, CEOs, executives, people that were there for different reasons, but they all wanted to understand the mind better, adding to their stack of tools and skills and strategies. And I'm like, wow, I'm a nobody. Like, I have not had 40 years of industry experience. I don't know what these guys know. I haven't gone through what they've gone through. I haven't seen any clients in my life. I was like, how am I even going to catch up? Not that it matters, but you can't ignore the room full of people that are studying this that could all potentially be competitors, right? At least that's what I was thinking at that time with my somewhat limited mindset. And I was like, you know what? I am going to out-invest my competitors. Because if I can't outwork them, they already have an extra 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. I'm not interested in spending 30 years, 40 years doing trial and error. I need to figure this out. I need to aggregate this. I need to do this precisely. Again, like an engineering project. So I thought I will out-invest. And luckily for me at that time, again, not financial advice of any sort, right? Seek a professional if you want that. Licensed professional. Yeah. I remember at that time, because of my startup, we did manufacturing, and I had some credit lines built up. And my personal credit was also quite built up. And I leveraged my personal credit, and oh my gosh, I sold whatever I could. I sold my alarm clock. I had a Logitech alarm clock that I loved. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it was one of those early on smart alarm clocks, and it could play music. Back then, it was like a marvel. It was amazing. And I sold that thing. And I'm pretty proud of it, though. Like, I sold it for higher than what I bought it for. And I sold my bike. I sold my car. I sold my Xbox. I sold everything I could think of that I could sell on, like, Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or whatever, right? And then, of course, I used that to pay off the credit. I dumped so much money into more training because I was like, you know what? I'm going to out-invest them. Because if I could buy the time, the knowledge, why would I not? Why would I spend my own time? Because as you all know, maybe you don't all know, but some of you do know this, the wealthy buy time. And there's a way to trade time is how, and the knowledge of how to utilize the mind to minimize the time it takes to achieve a specific outcome. And I was interested in buying that knowledge, right? Now, I started designing my ideal client because I'm like, you know what? I got my alarm clock and my bike and my car, all that actually is not enough to pay this off. I need to start making some money. And I was actually jobless at the time because I was just dedicating myself to training and living on credit. And I was like, you know what? I should put what I'm training to do to work and practice and do this, right? I started designing my ideal client. I was like, you know what? I want someone who is used to investing in themselves, that is not afraid of investing in who they are and growing, right? And I was like, who are some people that are really open-minded to larger numbers of investment? I was like, oh, real estate professionals. And so 2016-ish, I was like, you know what? Real estate investors. So I put down real estate investors. And I was like, you know what? I also don't have any marketing capability at that time. It was a one-man show. I was doing this reprogramming of the mind that I just recently learned at that time. I was like, I need to find a way to practice with people that really are highly skilled already and or have big interest in the mind. So I wrote down in my design, mild to intense interest and experience in the workings of the mind. Because even though it may seem intimidating to many, to me, it was an easy way to get rapid feedback. the most amount of feedback you can get. Because some people, they're like, that's too stressful if you work with someone who already knows a lot about the mind. I'm like, no, that's what I want. And then I also, because of what I was saying about marketing, I was like, I don't really want to spend too much time marketing. I wanted someone that would refer. So I wrote down referral machine. I wrote down also self-closer. I don't want to spend too much time closing someone. I want to take my time to actually help my client. I want to dedicate my time to help them reprogram their ability to succeed rather than closing them. And then lastly, and there were other attributes, right? But one of the other ones that jumped out that I wrote down was someone who takes action. Because I don't want to do some work with someone and then they're lazy and they don't do anything, right? So someone who takes massive action, self-closer, referral machine, and then, of course, what I was saying, mild to intense interest and experience in the workings of the mind, and then a real estate investor. I put that all in. And then lo and behold, 2 weeks later, one of my very first clients showed up that I designed. And he was a real estate investor and he has a PhD in psychology. And now, was I intimidated? Hell yeah. Definitely. Complete honesty, right? Like I was a complete newbie. This guy's got I don't know, 12 years plus of experience and published and really well regarded, successful in that field and new real estate investor. And he told me, he said, William, I am kind of stuck in what I'm doing right now in terms of his new real estate career. And he wasn't making as much as he believed he could. And he said, I would really like to go from this to this. And neither of those numbers were numbers I was doing at the time because I had no income, right? And he was one of my very first clients. And I was like, transparently, I have not done those numbers. However, I'd love to help you. I'm going to say that some of these things are somewhat experimental and that if we can reprogram, your success, I would love some referrals, right? 5 months later. 5 months later. Now, here's a big lesson. He calls me and he's like, hey, William, I'm getting close to my goal, but something seems to be holding me back still. And I'm like, okay, right? Tell me more. And then for some reason, we transitioned into a different conversation. He said, I really want a new car. And then he said, but I don't need it. Notice the language here. He said, I want a new car, but I don't need it. And I was like, what do you want? And he said, this is a new Tesla that I really want. And I drive a Honda right now. It's fine. It's a great car. I don't need it. And then I'm like, why are you asking me this? He said, well, because my wife, my neighbors, people are talking about how it's a waste of money to buy something that you don't need. I'm like, wow. First off, you might need to move neighborhood if people are judging you for the kind of cars that you want to get and that they are calling this a really outrageous expense, right? Because look, Teslas might be a lot more than a Honda, but it's not a supercar in terms of, what he was getting. Let's not get into the technicalities of the cars. I asked him, okay, so you want this Tesla, but you don't need it. What have people been telling you? He said, well, people have been saying just save the money, put it into something else that will return more money and that I don't need this. But I'm curious on your perspective because obviously of our relationship. I said, I'll just tell you straight up. If you want what you want and then you go and do what you need, you're training your mind to ignore what you want and continue to deliver to you what you need instead. This is a pattern of settling. It's very basic, yet so many of us do it. We go to a restaurant, we want something, we're like, nah, that's $10 more than what I was expecting to spend. I'm not going to go for that tomahawk steak, or I'm not going to go for that filet. I'm going to just go for something cheaper because that's all I need. Because my mom used to tell me You don't need that, right? That same pattern was exhibited at that time. And I said, look, it depends if you want to train your mind to go for what you want. Next time you say, I want to have this kind of success, are you going to just deliver to yourself what you need subconsciously? Or are you going to get what you want? What is it, right? He's like, I know what to do. And now I'm not saying this is the cause of his breakthrough, but the following month, he had a breakthrough. So big. And the breakthrough was that he hit the goal that he set with me when we started. And it was so big, he won an award. And then all of his friends and mentors started asking him, hey, what happened? How did you go from where you were here, right, to here? And he said, talk to William. And the referrals started flooding in. Now, this story is not to tell you how cool that whole thing was. Yes, it was cool. It was incredibly cool for me, and for the people that we got to meet and got to work with, wonderful people. What was even cooler was that my formula of designing the people I want to work with worked. But I'm that guy who's a natural skeptic. And I'm like, you know what? Cool. It gave me the one romantically. It gave me this client, which was incredible, wonderful human, and exactly what I designed. Can I repeat this? Now, I can proudly say 9 years later, we have been repeating it over and over and over and over again. And even if I do not disclose any more so-called secrets, which there are many, and they are immediately applicable, because we're going to be sharing 1 to 2 secrets every episode that are in regards to your personal success. That's the category of secrets we're going to share. These are secrets of the mind and its interaction with your so-called reality. Because if you can actually identify what it is, because the mind is, I mean, if you use the word big, it's not really as easy to quantify, but I'm just going to say it's big, right? If your mind in this massive space, this big space inside your mind, if you can find where that small, precise change or changes you need to make that will yield the exact outcome and change that you want in the physical, you would do that all day long, wouldn't you? You would repeat it over and over and over and over again, 9 years, 10 years, however many years you want to do it, you would keep doing it. Here's the thing. We are interested in sharing these secrets with you because I believe it's time for humanity to upgrade. For you to have these tools would mean that you can finally free yourself from the limitations. And even if I didn't share any more other so-called secrets that I'm calling secrets, and to be honest, these are not actually secrets. They are things that you should have known, could have known, would have known. You naturally deserve to know. You naturally deserve to know these things. And I'm here just as a messenger, a broker of secrets. And my only expectation from you is you paying attention and practicing them. This is basically like an open source project. I'm basically giving you the source code, giving you how this works, what it is. It's up to you to go and use it, right? Now, no promises or guarantee will be given here. I am going to share stories after stories. It's up to you. It's up to you to decide whether you're going to use it or not. And look, I don't expect you to believe me either, because what I'm about to tell you after this, we're going to dive into some other key parts of the story, and it'll make sense of why this exists. I think you're going to see why you'll want to use these things. And as you do, share it. And I'm not asking you to share this just because, oh, we need more viewers or more listeners, subscribers. That's cool and all. What I am saying is, if you experience this, it's going to change the way you interact with your reality. You know, it's the cliche way of saying, well, I mean, the cliche is it'll change your life, but I'm not going to tell you that. I'm going to tell you it'll change the way you perceive and experience reality, because that's actually bigger. Yeah, that's bigger. Your reality is so much bigger, and you have so much more to experience. And I'm here to give you some concrete tools that you can utilize right away. Now, let me say this. Again, I was starting to allude to, if I didn't share any more other secrets, this one thing alone about designing who you want to work with would change the game for you. And I'll tell you this, a hint of a future episode is that everything that you design the first time around will likely, right? Whether it's you designing who you want to date, who you want to marry, who you want to be with romantically, or whether it's you designing your clients, designing, people that you want to have as your friends or people any one you want to design, I'm going to tell you right now, a hint, it's tied to your identity. How you perceive yourself is going to change what you believe you deserve in terms of friends, colleagues, investors, employees, clients, or loved ones, all of the above and more. You and your identity is going to dictate how you design, which is very important. Why you need to be very deliberate in designing something that is outside of your belief. Conventionally, people say outside of your league, outside of your caliber. What I'm saying is it's outside of your current thinking. It needs to be something that almost intimidates you, or maybe full on intimidates you, thinking, oh, I don't deserve to be around that person. Maybe these are not thoughts that you share with other people, but who cares, right? I'm telling you right now, inside of you, if you have this dialogue, you're like, oh, that person's too good for me. Or that person, I can't hang out with that person. That person, why would they want to spend time with me? Those are the kind of people I want you to design into your life. Upgrading you, the first thing you do is designing. The second thing is placing yourself in an environment that naturally pulls you into an upgraded level. Now, don't expect perfection from these people you design. What I am saying is design something that is outside of your current comfort zone. And if you were to design your clients, write 25 attributes. 25 attributes. Not more, not less. And I'll tell you why. The reason is if you go more, it's more specific. It's too specific. We've tested this a lot. If you go less, it's too vague. You're going to attract a lot of people that may not fit exactly what you want. Go for 25. Trust me for now. Test it, experiment, and then find out for yourself. Now, allow me to say this. There's a key part to how this works that I'm going to disclose later on in the closing of this episode. But allow me to tell you the other parts of the story of the origin story, and how this came to be. Because so far what you've heard is, okay, I found out about something when I was 17, about the mind, and how the mind is actually interacting with our reality and in ways that we're not conscious of, right? The subconscious, the unconscious. I started reading a lot of books, but I didn't go to formal training. Finally, something that was seemingly negative, the plateauing of a startup and feeling stuck, occurred, and then it prompted me to go all in on a training. And then when I went to the training, I was asked what I really wanted, right? Because many of us don't explore that. And if you don't explore what you really want in life, you're oftentimes going to be focusing on whatever that is around, which is full of what we don't want. Because if you ask your friends what they want, they'll most likely tell you a bunch of what they don't want. And in the mix, they'll tell you a little bit of what they want. So my simple point is, if you want to experience a life that you want, you need to start training yourself in designing them and then not settling them, right? So as I uncover that, right, I designed what I wanted romantically, and my business, I designed who I want to work with, the people I want to work with. So now let me give you the context of how this all occurred. This is not driven simply to create upgrade, right? Because look, why would I say there's a mission to upgrade humanity? I could just teach people how to design their clients and make that my niche, right? It all started when I was 4 years old and I witnessed human trafficking. And what was interesting was, and it was very unfortunate, what was interesting was I was asking my mother, I was like, how are these people without limbs, without arms or legs? And my mother, and it was a street beggar, a beggar on the street asking for money. I was like, how are these kids, right? These were kids that were probably 5 or 6 years old without limbs. I'm like, how were they born this way? My mother didn't want to answer. But after I kept pressing and pressing and pressing, and I was, 4 years old myself. So I was, like as many little kids would do, they want an answer. They keep pushing for it. My mother finally said, they weren't born this way. It appears that they weren't born this way. And they were, and she knew very well some of the unfortunate events that were happening in the region. And she said, well, these children were taken and then limbs were removed. And I'm sorry that this is a little graphic. And they were made street beggars so that people would have compassion on them and give them money. Now, I don't know about you, but when I heard that, a fury of anger immediately rushed up. And I can't even describe to you. And even now I can only describe the visual. And I felt that so strongly, it almost consumed me that moment as a 4-year-old. And I was like, you know what? Someday I need to solve this. And my mother said, become successful. And someday maybe you could become a voice or become something, or you could do something for these people to prevent that or to save them. And for a long time, the reason I went and built a startup, the reason I even came to the States, the reason I began my entrepreneurial journey was literally, to solve that problem in the back of my mind. How could humans do that to each other? It wasn't just about that little child that I saw, that I witnessed, that I met. It was about humanity as a whole. Looking at our so-called history and how much we have done to each other. And look, I'm no saint by any means, but I wanted to do something, right? And that was what caused me to come to the US and embark on this entrepreneurial journey. And it was an imperfect journey, but it was perfect for me to witness, wow, the reason we haven't yet done that, a lot of it has to do with scarcity. A lot of it has to do with limitations of the mind. And a lot of it has to do with thinking that our reality is just what happens to us and that we don't get a choice. And this whole time, I'll tell you this whole time, I was searching for a solution that will allow me to help people like that little kid, but not when that has already occurred to the little kid. Of course, including that too. But before that occurred, before that child was sold, before that child was taken, or however that had occurred, or whoever who decided to take the child and do such terrible things. All of those people involved or remotely involved, how could we help them change their hearts and their minds? Not just their minds, but their hearts. And so this journey brought me, when I was about 18 years old, I joined a Christian church. Wonderful experience, wonderful people, had a fantastic time. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to go on a mission. I became a missionary for them. Now, I want to point this out because that is also interwoven into my story. As my observation of what I experienced in that church, I saw tremendously genuine people that would sacrifice themselves and their interests to serve and to give, to help other people. I was impressed. It was a very, very stark contrast to what I remembered, what I saw with that child, right? I mean, in terms of societal and cultural difference in that church versus, what I witnessed. Anyway, long story short, I became a missionary and I got sent to New York City. And I remember interacting with people from all over the world. And I'm very grateful for that experience because I got to share something not tangible. I got to share something that was not tangible with other people for 2 years as a volunteer. Now, during that time, I witnessed many supernatural events, some perhaps explainable, some perhaps not at all. And yet I walked away feeling like we can teach people spirituality, but they're down here. Spirituality and physicality, it's the suffering does not end just because someone gets spiritual. Now, I'm not saying that if you really truly become spiritual and that the suffering wouldn't end on this planet. What I am saying is too many people need a bridge, a gap. Something that will bridge that gap is what I mean. And as I finished my mission, I went home and I felt like there was so much more to be done. I didn't feel like I finished. I felt like I was just getting started. It was a hard mission. It was difficult to get screamed at, yelled at, sworn at. But that's not the point. The point was, as I witness helping people change, I notice some people would readily say, yes, I'm in. But there's a good majority of the people that needed that bridge mentally and emotionally. They needed structure. They needed a system. They needed something that would allow them to let go, not only of their current baggages, but even the trauma from their families and their ancestors, the people. I mean, think about the math, right? In 12 generations, how many ancestors do we have? 12 generations can exist in the last 400 years, and tons of crap have happened in human history in the last 400 years alone. How many ancestors do you think you've had? Roughly 4,000 people. Now think about how much trauma 4,000 people could experience in the last 400 years. A shiz ton. A ton, yeah? And if you consider how many dinner conversations where they can literally pass those stories down to you, way too many. It's not just opportunities for them to pass them down. Many of them live them as truths. They pass them down as truths. These trauma, these unfortunate events, these limitations, things that may have helped them preserve their lives back then, but now it's limiting you in every single way possible, whether you know it or not. And as I become more and more aware of that over this journey of my own, and as I return home from that mission, I began to become more cognizant, began to be more conscious of I need to find a solution mentally, emotionally. And so I thought maybe I just need to build a business, create a successful startup, make tons of money, and then I can research and I can figure out, I can finally, use money to help people. But as you know, money is really a magnifier. And my neurology was really quite limited. And so even if I had more money, I was only going to magnify limitation. And yeah, would I be more comfortable having that limitation on a yacht or on a private jet? Sure, whatever. The point is not that. Yeah, because there are plenty of multimillionaires, even billionaires out there that have one or two or multiple areas of their lives they don't want to share with you because they are so miserable. And we've met people like that, right? We've helped some people like that. The reason, and look, no perfect humans that we're talking about. None of us are perfect. What I am saying is, can we create a structure mentally, emotionally that allows us to let go and offload that baggage, that negative emotion, that trauma, the stuff that may not even belong to you, that belong to your ancestors, right? All that said, when I have found the one romantically, I saw a glimpse of what it could be like if all of us could literally design what we want in terms of relationships, not just romantically, but then when I designed my client, I was like, in business too. Imagine if you don't have to work with that asshole that you don't want to work with, right? You know what I'm talking about? Maybe you don't. Imagine the people you work with just brings you joy, bliss, happiness, because they're so fun and wonderful to work with. And they can be, right? We've had people come to us, they're like, oh, I can't believe it. After I started designing that, I keep running into people that I want to work with, and I'm having so much fun. I'm having the time of my life. What I discovered at that time was exactly that. I was like, wow, I cannot not share this. There's no way. I can't keep this to myself. And on top of it, I cannot upgrade my own life if I don't experience a changed environment. And if you look at your environment, it's not just your immediate circle. It's this world. It's people that you know and people you don't know. It's everyone on this planet and beyond. What I'm telling you here is very simple. You can't say when the kitchen's on fire that you're in the living room and it's no big deal. Hey, it's just the kitchen. We're all in the same house. This planet, our home, we are all responsible for upgrading it together. And so as I venture into this journey of creating upgrade, when I made up my mind, I'm like, you know what? We need to upgrade humanity. I have no expectations of any of you being saints, because upgrading humanity does not mean that, right? It means giving us more freedom of choice, giving us more power, more ability to achieve more exploration of our potential, true potential. And finally be able to shed yourself of that old story of who you are or who you're not. And being able to embrace what you want, not just what you need. An abundant planet. And truly, we live on a planet that's full of abundance. Yet, it is now time for you to experience that true, fully immersive form of abundance. And allow me to leave you with 2 points. One point being the very skills that I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you some more structure on how to design your client, design your network, right? Because that will be a game changer if you apply this. And the other thing is, you will find that you may or may not believe you deserve, as I mentioned earlier, this new network that you designed, this new group of clients. Allow me to share with you one final story. I remember moving into a neighborhood, and I deliberately bought a home in that neighborhood because I did not feel like I deserved to be there. Many of these seasoned entrepreneurs, many of these incredibly successful investors, business owners, they had many more decades of experience and success. And one day I ran into probably and possibly, I would say, the most successful person in that entire neighborhood. And also one of the kindest individuals, one of the most wonderful humans. And he said to me, and it is the question that I wanted to be asked. He said to me, William, I own an investment fund. It's about, I'm not going to disclose it. Yeah. It's a large number. And he said, I know you don't do hundreds of millions or billions in investment or an investment fund. What makes you think you can help me grow and experience my true potential and upgrade, right? And achieve my goals? Now, some people may find that offensive. I find that delightful, that somebody would have that level of trust, confidence, and straightforwardness in a new friend that they just made and just disclose what they're feeling, right? And that's very freeing. My response to him was very simple. I said, look, if you want investment advice, definitely not the guy. You've got mentors that are doing massive, massive funds. Ask them, right? Ask the professionals, the people that really know. But if you believe you can achieve what they have done, but in less time, let me unlock you. I'm a programmer. And I did not expect him to say, I'm sold. I'm in. When do we start? Now, it's truth. I haven't done those things. That being said, my specialty, it's programming and unlocking the mind through structures that are repeatable, structures that are not. And look, there are people in the mindset, personal development space. And frankly, I don't see myself necessarily in that space because we are really a programming company that programs the mind. What I am saying here, though, is that there are people, experts, truly magnificent instructors and teachers out there that have these structures, but they may not share. Because the old model is seminar business. If you go to more seminars, they make more money. Nothing wrong with that, right? It's just that we can't upgrade the planet that way. If we want to upgrade the planet, billions of people, this needs to be easy to share, not only shareable, but repeatable. The old models of mystical, mysterious, powerful truths that you only pick up if you spend enough time, that's great if you're willing to spend years, just like I did, right? And tons of money. Well, truth be told, I'd rather spend the money, but not the time. I want to upgrade humanity. And I think that if you are upgrading yourself and your environment and those around you, we're all going to experience a more magnificent, more abundant future. And so the story did not end. My friend hired us and I worked with him. And as he shared his goal with me, he said, I think this may sound ridiculous to you. Now, I'm like, what are you talking about? You've done already this much. How could this goal be ridiculous, right? He shared the goal with me. He's like, I know a lot of my friends think this is ridiculous. I'm like, you need new friends. As I've been sharing with you this whole time, right? We and our environment really do matter. They will pull you down or they'll pull you up. It's that simple. Surround yourself with people that you don't know that you deserve or that you don't believe you deserve right now. And look, it's not about worthiness or not. Frankly, that's a concept. What I am saying is I want you to deliberately challenge what you currently find comfortable, who you feel comfortable spending time with. These people that will challenge your boundary of what reality is and what you're capable of, they are the people you need to spend time with. Allow yourself to immerse in that environment and be challenged. Look, if you're comfortable, you're not really growing. And sure, we can be comfortable in the discomfort, but I'm interested in hypergrowth. And if you experience this hypergrowth, I promise you, here's how it works. There's growth. And then you step out, there's the comfort zone, first off, and then there's growth. If you step into the growth zone, it's going to be uncomfortable. The reason is that growth zone, the return does not justify the investment. What you put in, the time, energy, money, all the resources, does not justify the 10, 20, 30% that you get back in terms of growth. You're growing just marginally. And you think it's great. That's amazing, right? But what you don't realize is that most people are blinding themselves because if they push farther, they go into panic zone, right? Right outside of that growth zone, there's the panic zone. And they panic, they retrieve. And they're not cowards. This is just human behavior. We like what we're familiar with, what we're used to. We retrieve because that is stepping into the unknown, that panic zone. The panic is simply a signal that you're stepping into the unknown. But if you are brave enough, and we will empower you with tools from this episode on already, right? And as you continue to listen, continue and do share with your friends because you want them to step into this next zone, which we call the hypergrowth zone. Right outside of this thin layer of panic, you will experience this blissful state of hypergrowth. And if you are so willing to step into that and free yourself of those old limitations that will seem actually like it's nothing when you are there. But right now, it feels like everything. When you're willing to design people that will challenge you and pull you out into hypergrowth, And then, of course, empower yourself with the structures, strategies, and techniques that we're going to share with you, and that some of you are even in our trainings. Use the techniques, use the strategies, use the tools. You will find that hypergrowth is where you belong. Now, let me share with you the final point of how to use this design formula. Just like everything in life, if you go buy a house, you would hope that there was an architect, an engineer involved, and that they designed everything according to code and exceeds standards. You would hope that your home wasn't just thrown together, right? That would be unsafe. How many of us live our lives and our social circles, our business circles, our romantic life in such a way that is not structured nor designed? How unsafe is that, right? When you think about risk, that is risk. People are like, oh man, how do we mitigate risk? Well, design what you want. That is the ultimate way to mitigate risk in your life. So as you begin your journey into Upgrade, design your ideal clients. Design your ideal investors. Design, some of you are in real estate, many of you, because we work with a lot of real estate professionals. If you are looking for buyers, investors, sellers, design them. If you're in the banking professional, investment banking, same thing. Who do you want to work with? Are you designing them? If you're in tech, yeah? If you're in other industries, are you designing your ideal clients, customers, again, your business partners? Do you want to work with people that you don't want to work with? And most people are okay going by just gut feeling that has not been designed. And I'll tell you what, gut feelings can be trusted sometimes, can be not trusted sometimes, because guess what? It's old programming that runs it. And oftentimes we don't actually get just pure gut feeling. It's interference. It's interfered by our own limitations. So you're not getting the purest form of data. So you're listening to advice from yourself that are not actually reliable because you haven't cleared the old stuff. You haven't structured this sound structure that will support your growth, your hypergrowth. So here's some concrete steps. A piece of paper, notebook, phone, whatever you want. In an undistracted space, right? Write down 25, only 25 attributes of your ideal customers. Per category, right? Like customers, and if you want investors, ideal investors attributes. Now, here's the most important point. This is not market research, meaning you're not writing down what you think the market is telling you that's normal. You're not writing down, hey, this is how the typical customers and how they're like. I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you as if you're the master of your reality. What would you design? Who would you like to work with? You don't have to be forced to work with people just because that's the market. That's how the market is. No. Do not justify, because you are now taking back reign of your life. From this moment on, design based on your own wants, not needs, wants. And that is the beginning of you stepping into the so-called unknown, because this will be a group of people that you actually want to work with, but it will be unknown because you're not familiar with this group. You're not familiar yet. And design 25 attributes. Promise me not to do more, not to do less, just 25. And then look at the list daily and tweak it. Because you may meet people after you design it. You're like, oh, that was awesome, but something's missing. You tweak it, yeah? Now, I want you to get really specific. When I mentioned earlier self-closer, right? Or mild to intense interest in the mind and the workings of the mind, right? And experience, those are pretty specific, yeah? But not so specific like I'm going to design their eyebrows. No, not that, right? Design the attributes that are important to you, that will help you do business better, right? If you're, let's say you're selling a skyscraper, who knows, right? Maybe you're in real estate. If you're listening to this, what kind of buyer do you want? Do you want someone who takes forever to make a decision? Someone who has no way of verifying funding right away? Do you want to work with someone who's negative, mean, even yell at you? Maybe they'll get you paid millions, but do you want to get yelled at? design what you actually want, not what you need or will settle for. Remember that. And so how you do it is, I want someone who's happy, pleasant to be around, delightful perhaps. I would hang out with this person even if we weren't doing business. Maybe write that down, right? Now, do remember, set boundaries in your design, not just, I like this person, right? Because so many people do business with people they like, but they're not competent. So please design them as competent individuals too, right? I love working with competent people because they get it faster, right? So design, right? Maybe design their ability to understand what you're sharing with them, whether you're selling them or investing with them or whatever it is. Remember 25 attributes and then get specific and is focused on what you want, not what you don't want. And so final point here, what you don't want, you may say, hey, I don't want someone negative. No, that's not going to work because your mind has a hard time negating it. So you need to write it in positive language. If you don't want someone negative, write someone positive, someone who's pleasant to be around. If you don't want someone who's slow, don't say someone who's not slow. Say someone who is fast to action. These are the key points. And as you learn and as you listen and pay attention and watch the future episodes, you will find that we're going to continue to build upon this design principle. Because if you learn to master this, I want you to even for a moment suspend your current belief system. If you could design exactly what you want, if you could design everything you want, and that your life reflects that, how important is this podcast, this conversation, this experience of upgrade for you? Again, welcome to the Brokers of Secret. We'll see you in the next episode.